Hello, and welcome back to my reaction series of Arcane. Today we're going to be doing episode 4. Episode 3 was really good. I enjoyed it a lot, and it seems like we got to a bit of a sort of a stopping point with the series. Unfortunately, like I mentioned in the last reaction, I did hear that there was a time skip in the series, and I'd be pretty surprised if it didn't occur in between episodes 3 and 4, just given how many character threads, plot threads, and things like that just seem to be in a place where a time skip would result in some interesting developments, an interesting before and after comparison. For example, we have Vi, who has undergone so much suffering, so much torment, emotional and physical anguish. She was put through the ringer in episode 3, and last we saw of her, she was taken away by an enforcer, and it'll be interesting to see where she's at. Same with, actually, I'm even more interested in where Powder is, considering how her mentality just completely broke in the last episode. She just totally snapped and ran into Silco's arms and seemed to join the dark side of the underground. Likewise, we had some interesting stopping points for the likes of Jayce and Victor and Heimerdinger and Medarda and all of the political machinations going on in Piltover. So there seemed to be some hints about some sort of industrial revolution, some sort of societal revolution that hinged on the discoveries that they made when it came to hex tech, I believe is what they called it. The arcane magic that Jayce devoted his entire life to discovering and harnessing. So lots of interesting plot threads, lots of story developments that I feel would benefit from a time skip. If there is going to be one in the series, this seems like the opportune moment. But regardless, interested to see where it goes, regardless of whether or not there's a time skip. It's pretty unfortunate that I got that spoiled for me. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's jump in. Heimerdinger. So the title of the episode was Happy Progress Day. Not sure what that means.
You wanted to see me, Professor?
Ah, come in, Jayce. Can you believe it? Our city is about to turn 200 years old.
It's shaping up to be an amazing progress day. Stanwyck Padidley. Huh. I don't know much about him.
Stanwyck set his personal ambitions aside and focused on something far more important. Our future. He realized that
Personal
was his
ambitions.
sacrifice. The council has recommended you give the Progress Day speech this year. Your hex gates have done wonders for our city, brought scholars from distant lands,
Okay.
reignited passions in arts and science.
So there's been this revolution.
You deserve this honor.
I will do my best to make Piltover proud, Professor.
Wow, look at
It's
Jayce.
short notice, I know.
Ooh, this is amazing. For anyone who's played Final Fantasy IX, I'm immediately reminded of Lindblom, of the Mist Revolution, or the Mist technology. So Jayce and Victor did it. Beautiful. So this is the first time I want to talk during the opening, because I have a few things to say. That was really interesting. So right away it looks like there's some sort of time skip, because Jayce is now in a position of power. Him and Victor have revolutionized, it seems like, society in general with hex tech technology, and he's now much more influential. He's got respect, it seems like. I found it really interesting how Heimerdinger mentioned his old friend who put his personal ambitions aside for the sake of the future. Maybe a subtle hint at telling or warning Jayce about perhaps not getting so caught up in his personal ambitions. Again, it seems like Heimerdinger is staying on that side. He's staying cautious. This is the sort of thing I was looking forward to in the time skip. Looks like they're starting with the Piltover stuff, and you guys know I ate all that up in episode 2, so exciting. It's like a mix of BioShock Infinite's Columbia and Final Fantasy IX's Lindblom to me.
The visionary behind the hex gates, a beacon of trade.
The visionary.
For our great city of progress.
Ow, ow, ow. Kate!
Serves you right.
Caitlyn.
I'm working.
Oh, I can see that. I mean, there's so much crime to thwart outside your family's tent.
I can only imagine the strings she pulled to have me posted here.
It's your
So
fault,
she's
really,
some sort
for
of...
not following her into a
Oh,
career
is she an
more befitting
enforcer
your station.
of some
I
sort?
really have to send it to Anarchy.
Have fun hurting the drunkards.
So I wonder how long the time skip was. Jayce doesn't appear to be too much older. Caitlyn's a little bit older. maybe 5 years, something like that. He's one of Silco's guys.
Shipping manifest?
So is she. Firelights. Ooh. Okay. Shimmer. In bats this time. So this is a third party. Silco, Piltover, and whoever these guys are. Okay. That's reminiscent of something.
She's here.
She's here. Boom. Powder. Well, she's doing work for Silco, it looks like. The grand entrance. Oh yeah, Powder's aged quite a bit. She's a badass.
Vi?
Ooh.
Why did you let me? Because you're a jinx!
That's really upsetting to see how broken she seems to be.
You are supposed to guard the cargo.
It's like a total 180. I think that's understandable, though. I mean, after what she experienced.
Heimerdinger
Victor.
believes science should be used to improve lives as much as we do. We just need to
Oh.
show him it's safe.
He's not looking too
And
swell.
what about the council?
Crystal like they
Stress?
asked.
What do we have on the docket?
Interesting
It all
contrast
began
between
with this,
Victor and Jayce.
a Hex Tech gemstone.
We found a means to fortify the crystals. This new version is stable and absolutely safe. We present to you the next chapter of Hextech.
Our designed portable devices.
Look at that. At least stature-wise, there is such a
The
contrast.
gemstone can power the Atlas gauntlets.
So they clearly have focus for how to apply this technology. They're not just doing it for the hell of it. They aren't just
Imagine-
aimlessly guided by
I
a
want
dream.
Hextech to be a
Not
tool
at all.
for us to
Give it a decade of careful research, and it will be ready.
A decade?
Oh, don't worry, my boy. It zips past you in the blink of an eye.
With respect.
Putting that kind of power into everyone's hands is dangerous. Keep at it, and I'm sure you will discover a way to safeguard Hextech against misuse.
He's continuing in that direction. More Caitlyn focus. Okay. So I wonder how common this sort of proactive measures, or these sort of proactive measures are for people in Caitlyn's profession these days. Oh,
You're from the Undercity. I can protect
Silco.
you.
Caitlyn Kiraman. Why does that not... You're supposed to be guarding him.
Oh,
If I could just question him,
I'll take it from here. Since you're looking for more work, you can take the graveyard shift tonight at the fair.
he's still clearly got some sort of thing going on with Silco, I bet. He doesn't want her snooping around there. So the Undercity now. Wonder how things are here. Oh, the last drop.
The Firelights were a target, and most are dead.
Yeah, Firelights.
wasn't
It's really
this
interesting.
how She froze up and lost her shit. She's a problem, and we all know it.
We?
She's loose cannon.
Who's we? It was your job to make sure things went smoothly. Don't disappoint me again. The world's growing smaller every day, thanks to the Hex Gates. And now we're cut off.
Cut off from technology?
What happened?
Oh, there she is.
She already told you.
I'm asking you. Your sister's gone. You know that as well as I do.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
Today's screw-up will set us back weeks.
Wow. They are extremely close.
Sorry.
I need to know that I can rely on you. I'm doing this for us, Jinx. All of us. The sons and daughters of Zon deserve more than their runoff.
I'm surprised that they're close enough for her to openly talk about Vi. For some reason, I didn't expect that. Oh, Piltover. Piltover upper society. Medarda.
Your mother
What's
would be
she up
proud.
to?
Would she? Tired of mingling?
Looking upward as always.
The only one actually worth my time is him.
The golden boy. Speak of the devil.
And for what reason is she interested in him?
Could I borrow you for a minute?
2 episodes ago, he was exiled.
To what do I owe
Now he's the golden boy.
It's Heimerdinger. We've shown him our research. He thinks we need more time.
It's Progress Day.
So it looks like progress is winning
Heimerdinger is a
over
great scientist,
tradition.
But he's old. He only ever sees the past. Piltover needs a leader who looks forward. Someone like you. Everyone wants Hextech for themselves. It's your speech.
Oh.
Just some wannabe street trash.
Oh
I got
no.
confused, that's all. Savika will clean it up. Savika's a regular Johnny on the spot.
This is amazingly presented, by the way.
I'm not weak, and I'm gonna show him. Oh, I'm gonna show him. Y'all see.
Can't believe that's powder. Yeah, Victor isn't doing well.
You should come up with me. We're partners. No, I'm not.
I love that. The darkness and the light.
Guess it's time.
Oh. What a great touch there. That's really great storytelling. The golden boy, the man on stage. He's the light, and Victor's in the shadow. Sick and crippled and not doing well. There's really a sense of him leaving those he
I'm just as shocked as you are.
was really close to behind a little bit, even though he's reluctant in it.
A few years ago, the Hex Gates opened their ports to the world.
A few years
and made
ago.
Piltover prosper. But
Wonder if
we're
he
not
still has
done
his
yet.
toy.
This year, we've created something new for you. Something that we will share with you when the time is right.
See, it's not very predictable. Here he's going with Heimerdinger.
For we are the city of progress, and our future is bright.
What an interesting character. 2 steps forward, 1 back. Oh, that's Medarda? Yep, she is not happy with that. She wants her golden boy moving forward. So I wonder why she took this job. She's the only competent one. Well, maybe they're competent. Maybe I'm too unfair. Let's see how they do here. Come on.
And I set the building on fire by accident. Totally by accident.
Powder? Or, Jinx? I gotta get used to calling her Jinx. There she is.
The gemstone is gone, along with some of our research.
Oh shit.
City has claimed responsibility.
She stole it.
How did it come to this?
I don't think he's too concerned, to be honest.
They may not be your
Or maybe I'm being a bit too harsh about him.
still our people.
But he obviously has that
cannot be controlled.
ulterior motive.
Over the years, of course they can.
The toy?
We need to address this immediately.
I agree. My mistake cost people their lives. I have come before you to recommend that we suspend all Hextech operations until the situation is resolved.
Thousands would lose their income.
But shouldn't the safety of Piltover be our first priority?
Am I to tell the Noxians their next shipment of wine?
Now that they've come this far, it's
Councillors,
hard to
it
imagine a world
appears we are
without
at
it.
an impasse. Perhaps the time has come to explore a more radical solution. I propose that a new chair be brought forth. As a councillor, he will have the resources necessary
Oh.
to protect all our investments.
Promote him to the council.
Does the boy have any experience?
Only that of a scientist, like Heimerdinger.
I believe Councillor Medarda is right. I second the motion.
Heimerdinger and Jayce are similar.
Half a dozen enforcers. Dead.
I feel bad for her, but I like her new personality. It's charming in its own way. There you go. So that solves their problem with keeping up, if they can harness it. That Milo figure.
I've had a break in the case.
Shouldn't you be resting?
While the trail is hot. Listen, you know how I've suspected there is a single mind.
No need for sentiment.
I think if I can figure out who made this, it could lead me directly to whoever's
Jinx
behind it all.
isn't really
No answer is
tactically
no.
astute, and Caitlyn's a smart one.
If I can just work this out, Marcus will have to listen.
Since I became a counselor.
You're serious?
I was actually hoping you might consider joining my staff.
I'd live behind a desk.
You almost died, Kate. I just want you to be safe.
Thanks, but I already have a job.
After the attack, your parents spoke to the sheriff.
I don't need charity, counselor. Yours or my parents.
This really answers why she's in this job now. This is amazing characterization for her. She didn't have much before. She had bits, but... increased focus on Caitlyn quite a bit. I like it.
I need to speak with one of the inmates. This one was hit by friendly fire. He's got reason to talk.
Inmate 2135. Yeah, I'm afraid that's not possible.
What kind of incident?
The not so pretty kind.
Oh.
Who assaulted him?
Of course. One look at him, and of course Violet would have done that.
Who the hell are you?
Oh. What an episode. That was awesome. Similar to episode 2 in terms of the political approach and a lot of the setup, but I think a little bit better. That was really good. Lots of things shifted, lots of new character elements, lots of development, and we've seen the vast majority of them post-time skip, but we're still missing a few. Yeah, cool. Okay, so episode 4 in the books. That was really great. That's probably my second favorite episode in the series after episode 3 so far. And I know we're not even halfway done. Still, it's been a really consistent and quality-filled lineup so far, and this just keeps it up. It was super good. It turns out it does end up being the episode post-time skip. That seemed like a pretty natural story development to happen, just to see how things developed. It seems like it's been 4 or 5 years. Jayce hasn't aged much, but at 20, the age gap from 24 to 28, 29 really isn't too much, so I don't expect him to look that different. Victor looks much different, but I feel like that isn't the result of age as much as his health, unfortunately. Caitlyn, she looks like she's become a young adult, and I think the most significant thing to look at is Powder, or Jinx now as she likes to be called, at her aging. She seems to be at least 4 years older. I would say 5 or 6 seems more likely, but regardless, it doesn't really matter too much. There's been a number of years in between this episode and the previous one, and a lot of things have changed. Enough for there to be a full-scale industrial revolution, Hextech revolution, thanks to Victor and Jayce. And one of them is experiencing a certain sort of fortune, and the other is experiencing the opposite sort of fortune. And on both sides, it's equally fascinating, I think almost equally emotional, even though you'd say that one of them is more overtly emotional than the other in terms of their path and their trajectory. Anyways, I'm speaking really vaguely, so I guess let's just get right into it. So the episode starts, and we have a talk between Jayce and Heimerdinger. And this talk sort of brings forth the idea of Progress Day. And it is immediately shown that Jayce has become a man of status. He's being given the honor of giving this Progress Day speech for the strides he's made in Hextech technology. So he's clearly a huge person, politically, technologically. He's a man of huge status in Piltover. Further emphasized later in the episode when we see that he's referred to as the Golden Boy by Medarda. He's got blimps with his face on them. Everyone knows his name. Everyone knows him as the prodigal son of this new progressive revolution, this step forward into the future. And like I mentioned, Heimerdinger is once again subtly hinting at thinking of the future rather than your own personal ambitions, not being tunnel-visioned, not just looking at this short-term goal in front of you or this dream without thinking of the long-term consequences and ramifications of that. He conveyed this to Jayce through the story of his friend, the man in the statue. And so we see that Heimerdinger is 100% still holding on to this idea of, don't fly too close to the sun. He's not a fan of this Hextech. He's not a fan of magic because he knows that misused, it can lead to destruction. And I think that he thinks that as long as it keeps progressing, it is going to be misused. I think he thinks it's a foregone conclusion. And that's why he was so against it in the first place. As well as things are going right now, things are going to continue to exponentially ramp up to negative consequences. And so I think it's pretty clearly established that Heimerdinger still thinks this way. Now, past that, we saw images of all of these blimps and all of these hovercrafts or flying vehicles and new buildings and all this magic you see, all these buildings emitting magic in this new Piltover. I loved the visuals of that, not just the sheer aesthetic, but to see how much things have progressed from that first shot we saw in episode 1 of them, of Violet and Powder and everyone looking over Piltover as they were going to steal from Jayce's apartment. Things have changed a lot. And like I said in the reaction, it's very reminiscent of Lindblom from Final Fantasy IX for me, a Lindblom that has been powered by mist. I apologize if you haven't played that game. Long story short, it's a city very much like Piltover, as we see in episode 4, a city powered by this revolution that led to a whole new way of life, this revolution called Mist. And the aesthetics are very similar, and the societal dynamics are very similar in terms of how Hextech plays a role compared to how Mist plays a role in Final Fantasy IX. And then, just in terms of, another comparison I can make is just in terms of the overall atmosphere, the celebration of Progress Day, it reminds me of the beginning of BioShock Infinite. And I won't get into many spoilers for BioShock Infinite at all. I don't want to spoil that for anyone. But for anyone who's played the game already, just the whole celebration of Progress Day, kind of the aesthetics as well, all of this sort of celebration of this grand city, people flocking there, it reminds me of the celebration at the beginning of BioShock Infinite in Colombia, when you're introduced to the game. So you know what I mean if you played it. Anyways, just a couple of parallels I noticed. And so we see a bit more of Jayce. He's being greeted by a lot of people. He seems to be some sort of celebrity. And we also see Caitlyn, who didn't have too much of a role prior to this in Act 1, well, the first 3 episodes. And so I think I questioned in the reaction about why she seems to have this position, because I didn't notice too much that would lead me to believe that she'd take up a position like this in the first 3 episodes. But to skip ahead a little bit, we later see that because of the explosion that happened, that she got caught up in, her parents, worrying for her safety, went to the council, or went to Marcus, at least, I think it was, and said, no, my daughter is not going to be an enforcer anymore. It's too dangerous. They want to pamper her. They don't want her to be put in danger, which is totally understandable for parents. But she's not having any of that. She doesn't want a job behind a desk, as she made clear to Jayce. She wants to be actively out there, making changes in society, understanding the root of all this violence, or everything that's disrupting things in Piltover, the root of the enemies that are making things difficult for them. And so I think has a very distinct conviction. She doesn't give a lick about what anyone else says. She has her own sense of justice, and she's going to follow that. And I really love that sort of dedication. She wants to do what she thinks is right, and she wants to impact Piltover in the most effective way that she thinks she can. That happens to be being an enforcer, and being one who isn't lazy, who doesn't rest on their laurels, one who is out there investigating things properly, as they should do. Because it seems like post-revolution, a lot of them seem to be sitting on their asses a little bit. They seem to be naive, not super smart, not battle ready. I don't know. That's just the impression I got from the bits we saw. And I don't think that Marcus is doing much to counteract that, because I'd imagine he still has some sort of deal going on with Silco. He did not at all try to help Caitlyn in her investigation. In fact, he actively deterred her away from it. So, judging by that, I think they still have something going on. So yeah, this is a big episode for Caitlyn. She seems to be one of the main players now, which is really cool. Going back to Jayce, something I find really interesting about him is that he's now this golden boy. He now has this status. He's been catapulted up the hierarchy. He's one of the most popular men in Piltover. He's definitely one of the most famous. And so one would expect someone to be corrupted by that, for their head to be automatically filled with more ambition, more, and to lose sight of what's really important to them. That's how a lot of stories tend to go. That's how a lot of people tend to think when they're overcome by this sort of power, this sort of influence. It inflates their ego. That's just how it is. But very notably in this episode, Jayce does not at all forget where he's come from. He doesn't forget his old friends and the people that have supported him up until this point. And the two people I mean are Caitlyn and Victor. Caitlyn, you can see he constantly visits her. She's still a very important person to him. He wants to protect her. He wants her to be safe, even if she's in an enforcer position. And he very much acknowledges that she doesn't want to be coddled or anything. He knows the type of woman she is, but he still wants her safe because he cares about her. He takes an active interest in her life. And, of course, him being put on the council and all of that, and offering that job to her, she didn't take that well. And it wasn't the most tactful thing for him to do, especially in that way, especially for someone like Caitlyn, who you can tell how she looks at the council, at the aristocracy. You can tell she wouldn't appreciate that sort of thing, so it wasn't the smartest thing for him to do, the most tactful thing for him to do, but his heart was in the right place. I think that's clear. He hasn't forgotten about Caitlyn at all. She's still very much a part of his thoughts. He still very much cares about her. And yet, I very much get the feeling that they're diverging, those two. They just have different paths. And as Caitlyn goes towards these dark secrets, trying to figure out the truth of what's going on, and trying to influence things in a positive way and uncover what can be done to help Piltover, Jayce is being thrown more and more into the light. He's becoming more and more of the type of person that it seems she doesn't respect too much. And I think that's sad, because they had a very genuine, and even in this episode, their banter at the beginning is very genuine. They naturally bounce off one another well. So I think it's sad to see what looks to be that friendship breaking up a little bit. And then there's Victor. I don't really know where to start with Victor, but I guess the best thing would be his appearance, which is what initially struck me, and I'm sure initially struck everyone watching. Victor is clearly very sickly. He's not doing well. He seems to be relying on his cane more. There are huge bags under his eyes. He looks pale. He looks gaunt. He doesn't have as much strength. Something's going on with him. He was coughing. He has some sort of sickness. And so that's why when they were showing Heimerdinger their inventions and saying, we're ready for the next step. And Heimerdinger said, okay, we've got, let's present it in a decade once you've ironed things out. I was looking at his reaction, and he in particular seemed devastated. And I think that's because he knows something. about his health. Whether it's just an inkling, whether he just feels that something's off because of obvious reasons, or whether he knows something more concrete, like he's going to die in a year or something like that. I don't know. But I think it's clear that he knows that he doesn't have that much time, which is very sad to me. It's really sad to see these two partners, this relationship where Jayce was literally about to kill himself. He was literally about to lose everything, his life's work. The dreams that he had as a boy would never be enacted. And then Victor came out, he reached out his hand, he saved his life, he supported him and said that he believed in him, and that he should believe in himself, and that together they would accomplish something. And so they stood tall together. At the end of episode 3, they found what they were looking for. They found the core of what would lead them into this new world that they envisioned for each other, for themselves. And they're amazing partners in that way. Because of that, I think that's a very endearing dynamic. And so it's sad to see these two men who once stood so tall together, one sort of start to fade in prominence, and the other grow and grow and grow, and become the spearhead and the personification of this new revolution, when it's really both of them. But the thing is, I don't think Jayce is intentionally doing this at all. I think he's being thrust into it because of a reason I'll get into in a bit later, and because that's just the natural flow of things. That's the momentum. His face, his name was thrown out there, and he's a good-looking guy. He's a young genius. He's a celebrity now, and that sort of thing just grows in influence. He was never going to become less popular when people started knowing his name. That's just how it goes. But at the same time, he very much wants Victor to be a part of things. He wanted him to do the speech with him. It was Victor who said no. He said, "You're my partner. You know, we're equal in this." There was a moment where there was a really conflicting moment where, I'm just jumping ahead a little bit, they were talking to the council about them losing the gem, and Victor was making an act to stand up and talk to the council, I guess. And Jayce said no, like he threw his hand out and he said, "Stay there, just keep sitting." And there's two sides to that, because on one side, you can tell he wants his friend to, he doesn't want his friend to have to exert himself more than possible. He wants to take the blame himself for this. There are very heartfelt and caring intentions and noble intentions in that way. He wants to explain himself why he is very much to blame. He doesn't want Victor to suffer for this. And also Victor the act of getting up is clearly takes a lot of effort for him now. So he wanted him to just stay resting. But the amalgamation of little acts like that is what continues to perpetuate the idea of Jayce being the figurehead, being the only person, rather than it being a partnership. So it's really sad in that way. So because I think subconsciously he's perpetuating that on his own. There's a selfishness, and then there's also heart to it that's just continuing to push him in that direction. There's, again, a dualism to that. There's him seemingly subconsciously becoming a bit self-important by going out and doing these things. But at the same time, he doesn't want to lose sight of where he came from, of the people that are important to him. And yet, that seems to be happening. Summed up beautifully by that lovely shot of the Victor crouching, sitting in the dark, Jayce drinking from his mug, and then placing it right in the foreground, covering Victor up to signify how he has completely overshadowed Victor in importance. The mug with his smiling, seemingly obnoxious face, which doesn't tell the whole story at all, but maybe a signifier of where things are going, or how people view him. It's just sad. And it was brilliant storytelling, that little shot. Very symbolic. And so, again, about that theme introduced in episode 2 of progression versus caution, it is clear that the world has moved on from Heimerdinger. It is clear that Jayce and everything he stands for now, and Hextech technology and progression, is what's prominent in the world now. And so, Heimerdinger's worst fears are seemingly coming to light, coming to fruition. And so the scales have been tipped, right? And so one more thing that I expected to happen was for Heimerdinger to vehemently oppose this pretty one-dimensionally. You know, there would be some subtext, and he's an intelligent guy. He's been in politics for hundreds of years, it seems like. At least decades, at the very least. So he would be smart enough to not be too overt about it. But the feeling I got was that if something like this were to have happened, the things that Heimerdinger would do would very much lean on, one-dimensionally, on trying to buffer Jayce, trying to buffer Hextech, not let it progress further, not having anything to do with it at all. But he very clearly takes some interest in it. He very clearly respects it. He admires it. He sees the merit in it. He's fascinated by it. He's a scientist himself, so he's not immune to the wonder of this sort of thing. And so I think that exemplifies the double-edged nature of this discovery, of discovery in general, as well as anything. Because as I mentioned, Jayce and Heimerdinger are very similar. They are both cautious in some ways, and they're both very adventurous, very fascinated by the wonders of this. It just so happens that Jayce is 90% adventurous, 10% cautious, whereas Heimerdinger is vice versa. But they both have that scientist spirit, that adventurer, discoverer spirit, and they both are intelligent enough to realize the dangers of it. But Jayce is just far too fueled by it to really make that become the forefront of his mind. And yet, it still plays a factor. I'll get into that in a second. And Heimerdinger, on the other hand, the vast majority of him just yearns for caution because, like we've said before, he's experienced those sorts of terrors in the past. But he can't help but be fascinated by it. That 10% of him can't help but really admire it. And really admire Jayce. They're sort of ideological, thematic rivals in this show, but they respect each other 100%, and I really like that. And now I think the natural thing to go to now would be Medarda. As I mentioned in the reaction, if Jayce is to be corrupted, I think she's going to be the source of that. She is still very much focused on this ambition of being admired by those in her family, to rise up in the totem pole. And so she takes a very active interest in Hextech technology and in Jayce. She mentioned early on that she was very interested in Jayce, that she was invested in him. Only one man that she was really interested in, and it was shown to be Jayce. And I questioned what sort of interest that was. Was it romantic? Was it purely for selfish gain? Was it political, you know? We see them together when he's talking to her about Heimerdinger, and she makes notable physical contact with him. She's very touchy-feely with him. So I don't know if that is establishing that they already have a relationship, or if she's pursuing that. And if that is the case, I don't know if that's purely for her own ambition, or if she genuinely has feelings for him, or both. It could be a mix of both. She continues to be very interesting. She is the one who proposed that he'd become a member of the council. We all know what that's about. She's trying to get a foothold in Jayce, and she's trying to get Jayce in the upper rungs of society. He's risen a lot. This is that extra step. Tons of political power there. And if she is his right-hand woman, or better yet, the puppet master behind that, that fulfills her ambitions of more and more power, more and more status, more achievements. So she continues to be a really interesting character. Medarda's great. Just super crafty, super interesting, really keeps me on my toes. Keeps being that chaos factor in the political landscape of Piltover. And I like that a lot. I'm realizing now that this is going to be a very long discussion. Sorry about that. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much, but there was a ton of substance in this episode. Now we go to the Undercity side of things. Zaun, as Silco mentioned in this episode. Basically, the crux of all I'm going to say is going to be centered on Jinx. So I felt at the end of last episode, after realizing that there would be immense changes in Powder, I felt like she would change a lot. I felt like her personality would shift and she would become quite unhinged. I didn't imagine it being this drastic. She's done a complete 180. Completely. She's totally different. And she's very off-kilter. She's very loose. And approaches violence and explosions and bloodshed with a grin, like a casual grin. She doesn't care about any of that. It's just another day in the office for her, it seems like. she does all these important jobs for Silco, it seems like, and she doesn't have any discipline because she's just not built that way. She's psychologically not able to. She has too many hang-ups, too many things in her past that cause her to act in ways that are not very conducive to productive operations for Silco. And a lot of that stems from what happened at the end. And I keep thinking back to her smiling as the explosion went off at the end of episode 3, or in the climax of episode 3, I should say. That was quite a big hint to how unhinged she is with her explosions now and how she seems to scream with glee at them. I keep going back to that shot. It's amazing for even more reasons now. And so she's so broken. She's incapable of discipline. She's incapable of thinking straight at any little thing that reminds her of Violet or her past or any of that. And she's internalized what she is so much that it seems as if that she's taken the name that others called her when she screwed up, Jinx, as her, I guess, real name now. That's what Silco's calling her. And so I don't really know if that's an enforcement of the idea that she is this screw up, that she will never be that person, and that she should therefore just embrace the opposite of the person she was trying to be. And now she's gone in with reckless abandon at that. Maybe that's why she acts this way. That's natural sort of psychological reaction formation. The opposite thing from what she wanted to be in the first place, because she's just everything in her life has told her that it won't work out that way. So maybe she's just gone the other direction. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe they'll dive more into that. But what's clear is she's not right. She's having visions of Milo. I'm not sure if I saw Clagger, but I definitely saw the ghost of Milo sitting on her shoulder, whispering into her ear, telling her things that will fuel her insecurities, criticizing her, all of that. And so Milo, the role Milo played in her life has never really left. And I think that's just exacerbated by the guilt she feels. Would she really have built that doll of Milo if she didn't feel that immense guilt and had to express it in some way? No, I think she feels that way, and she's remembering him as he always was, as someone who would criticize her, as someone who would tell her that she was a screw-up, and she uses feedback from what he would have told her as someone to talk to. Because I feel like she doesn't have many people to talk to, except for one person. Now, her relationship with Silco is super interesting. I was wondering at the end of episode 3 what he really saw her as. Did he see her as a tool? Or was there a bit of care in there? Because I felt like there was some care in there. And by their interactions, it really seems like there is. The woman who works for him, I forget her name, but the woman who was complaining about Jinx told him, she's screwing everything up, she's a liability, blah, 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 blah. He blamed her for it and wasn't hearing any of it. She leaves, and we see that Jinx is listening on the whole thing in the rafters or whatever she was doing. He covers for her all the time. She actively screws up things for him. Those aren't the actions of some cold pragmatist who has no emotions at all. Like I said at the end of episode 3, he sees himself in her. He was betrayed by his brother, Vander, just as she was betrayed, in her eyes, by Violet. He saw how hurt she was, just as he knew how hurt he was. He saw himself in her. And so I think he empathized with her a great deal. And in the ensuing years, I think he's grown to care for her. The point is, yeah, he values her far beyond her uses for him. I think he sees her as special because he sees himself in her and wants to continue to help her grow in stature, help her mature, maybe become the person she wants to be. I don't know. I think we need to learn a bit more about that before making any conclusions, but either way, it's super interesting. And so now it looks like the underground has become this, I don't know, the last drop has become this sort of club of all sorts of substances, people doing whatever the hell they want in there. It's a very different scene from Vander's time. And so I think we only really see the last drop and Jinx's hideout. We don't see too much of the underground, but the vibe I get is that it's anarchy in there. And speaking of anarchy, a bit of a natural segue here. I do my best. There seems to be a third faction, these Firelights that we saw in the beginning. They're not aligned with Piltover, because the Enforcers are with Piltover. If I remember correctly, the Enforcers talked about them in opposition, or as if they were some sort of adversary. I'm not sure, I might be misremembering. Either way, I think the show made it clear that the Firelights and the Enforcers are very different factions, if not opposing ones. In the beginning of the episode, they are actively trying to destroy the Shimmer. They're trying to screw up the operations of Silco's men. Men and women, I'm just saying men, unisex. So yeah, they were doing all of that. They were trying to disrupt Silco's operations. They've got these masks on. They've again got that greenish color palette, which I associate with the Underground. So I imagine they're one of the factions that defected. So there's always been this element, like I've said in previous reactions, of the Underground being divided. You have Vander's ideology, you have Silco's ideology. Now that Vander's gone, it doesn't seem that Silco's ideology reigns totally supreme. It isn't unanimous, because I think these Firelights are sort of anarchists that are trying to disrupt what he's doing, that have defected, that may be part of people that would have sided with Vander, but obviously have no power because Vander's dead. Everything's been taken over by Silco. So they've had to sort of hide away and hide their faces and become this sort of gang or whatever they are. And they're a really interesting element now. They add a bit of a chaos factor. What are they clearly don't want Silco to be doing what he's doing, but I get the feeling they're not totally with what's going on with the Enforcers either. They're not allied with Silco. Clearly, they literally screwed up his operations. And I don't think they're allied with the Enforcers or Piltover either. So it'll be interesting to see what their deal is. Again, I imagine they're from the Underground, just people that oppose Silco. But we'll see. I initially had that thought in my mind and thought that it would have been that maybe Violet was leading them, but funny enough, Jinx took off her helmet, and for a second I thought I was right, but no, that would have been a bit of a weird anticlimax. So yeah, interested in them, very much so. And they help key us into a bit of the political situation going on there. So I don't think it's overtly stated that Silco is still doing any deals with Marcus as he was doing at the end of Act 1. I assume he still is, though, because like I said, Marcus was not very accommodating to Caitlyn's investigations. I think he's covering. I think he's still allied with Silco. So they still have this connection. Silco still has this connection to Piltover. And he seemed to be having some methods of transport and trade between the two, under the table, of course. But when they were doing this smuggling thing, there are obviously employees and guards and people that are in Silco's pocket or being told to look the other way, like the person who was at the docks there, at the shipping docks, and who just got a bunch of coin and just said, okay, go ahead and let Silco's men do their thing. So they have some sort of operation going, but as Silco said, things aren't going well. Their means of smuggling and trade and everything that's going on, it's all being stifled. Their Shimmer stores maybe are being stifled. All things like that. It's not going well for him. It's not as simple as he maybe envisioned it to be. And I think the Firelights are a big reason why. And at the same time, he mentioned Hextech technology. Piltover is just progressing further and further and further, and they have more and more and more power because of Jayce's and Victor's technological advancements. He's feeling as if the Underground is being left behind, and the respect that he wants is getting further and further away from him, and Jinx's exploits are not helping that. And so, at the end of the episode, or near the end, she sets that building on fire, she goes in, grabs the gem that can be harnessed to use Hextech technology, and she gets it for their side. So it's a big boon for them. She does it after Silco had communicated to her that she had kind of screwed up at the docks. She wanted to compensate for that. So she wants Silco to value her very much. I think she cares about Silco, and I think he cares about her. And at the same time, he allows her to express herself, to do all these things that she needs to do to function in whatever state of being she can be in at all. And at the same time, she does work for him. Even if we set aside the fact that he cares about her, if you think about her as an asset purely, yes, she screws up lots of operations, she's over the top. Very simple things can be messed up by the things she does. But at the same time, then she goes in and does something extraordinary, like steal this highly important artifact that is the cornerstone of industry in Piltover for them. I don't think anyone else could have really done that, and certainly not any individual person. So as an asset, she's very valuable. So I think he values her because of that, but more than anything, it seems to me like he cares. Even there was an inkling of that at the end of episode 3. Now I think he very much does. But I could be getting bamboozled. Still not totally sure, just the impression I got. Oh, one very important thing I didn't really mention in the Piltover section. So I mentioned that Jayce is 90% progression, 10% caution. I'm oversimplifying. That's just a general principle of what I'm saying. I don't exactly mean that, but you get my meaning. His cautious side came out. He sided with Heimerdinger once he realized that the gem was stolen by Jinx. Once he took blame for it, and as soon as he realized all of that, he said, you know what, I think Heimerdinger is correct. And so the caution is what takes over in this moment, just as Heimerdinger's wonder took over when he saw what Jayce and Victor had been doing. That minority side of him, the minority side of Jayce, took over in this moment. He saw that lives had been lost. He saw that an important artifact was stolen from them. It was a huge blow, and he took blame for it. He was very genuine here. Again, showing he's a very genuine person, very heartfelt person, with conviction and ideals and ready to take blame for these sorts of things. He wanted to suspend all Hextech operations. He wanted to suspend the thing that had been gaining so much momentum, that had been leading to so much progress for him personally, so much influence for him, so much personal success for him. He wanted to halt all of it until further notice, until the situation was resolved, he said. And so that speaks of the type of person he is at this point in time, the type of person he's been from the beginning, that while things are shifting and while he's starting to go in a certain direction, he is very much still this guy. He's still very much a man of principle, a man of heart, who's not letting this personal success fuel an ego that guides him in the wrong direction, at least not easily. And that's why, if it does happen in the end, it's going to be even more painful, because he's resisting. He's resisting a lot. Anyways, so I find it very interesting that the one man who, well, him and Victor, who would want this to succeed more than anything else, is saying, you know what, we gotta stop, we gotta halt everything. Heimerdinger looks at what he says, and he's questioning him about that. And he seems genuinely puzzled at that and surprised, and he seems to respect it a little bit. Which, again, nice interaction between the two. Medarda seems very upset about it, just as she was upset when he said, we need more time to show you our inventions at the speech. Victor seems upset about it, and I think that's because of the time issue. He wants to do as much as he can right now, while he still can, because I think he gets the idea that he doesn't have much time. The other counselors, the nameless counselors, they're just upset because they have all their stock in Hextech technology. That's where society is right now. So naturally, they have lots of investments in it. And so stopping it would not only halt society dead, but it would screw up their personal businesses, I'm sure, their economic interests. You can't just take the foundation of society that is just, spurring things on more and more and more, and then just stop it. It's gone too far now. I think that just says a lot about where the political situation is, how they view how important Hextech is, where before it was just a dream, just a feeble dream from Jayce. Now they respect him a lot. They respect the technology and all of that. I just think it's an interesting snapshot of where things are at in Piltover. And so then he became the counselor, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, so just forgot to mention that in the earlier part. But I think that's all I have for now. I think that's all I have to say about this episode. Sorry for it going on really long, but it was super substantial. Tons of things to say about it. So for next episode, the primary things I'm interested in are seeing more of Silco and Jinx's relationship, more about the specifics of their dynamic, and just Jinx is a really interesting character right now, just as Silco is, of course. So I just want to see more of them. I want to see more of Victor and Jayce's dynamic, and I can't imagine as that progresses that it'll be a very feel-good dynamic, but regardless, I want to see more of it. I want to see what Jayce does with his power as counselor, and I just want to see how things progress. I think learning a bit more about the underground would be good, because we learned a lot about Piltover's political situation, their societal situation. We just got a glimpse of how things are like in the underground. Some subtext through the firelights, but I'd like a bit more. A bit more Silco, a bit more Jinx, a bit more of their operations would be cool in the next episode. And more of Caitlyn. She's a primary player now. And at the end, we see her coming into contact with a very familiar face. Violet is in some sort of jail, some sort of correction facility. I guess when Marcus took her at the end of episode 3, he threw her in jail. I thought he was going to do something else. I thought he was going to take her under his wing or something like that, which lends even more credence to the idea that Marcus is not acting in Piltover's best interests. He is in Silco's pocket. I think it's pretty clear to see. So yeah, Vi is in prison, and Caitlyn is going there to question her. Now, Caitlyn is going to question her because she injured the inmate, the one that used to be in Silco's gang, that had information that would have been useful for Caitlyn. And so I guess she's going to talk to Violet to ask her. I'm sorry. I keep referring to Vi as Violet. I don't think I'm ever going to kick that. I'm sorry. So I think she's going to question Vi about why she assaulted that prisoner. I think the conversation's naturally going to evolve into go to a place where we're eventually going to get Caitlyn realizing that this is, or no, I think we're going to get Violet realizing that Caitlyn is dealing with things that will remind Violet of Powder. I think there's going to be some recognition there. Something's going to spring up, some spark between Violet and Caitlyn, and then Jinx, some recognition there. Something's going to happen that gives Caitlyn a lead. And I imagine that'll happen in the next episode. So I'm really excited for that too. Anyways, this was a great episode. Thanks for sticking with me for this long if you have. I'm a little tired from talking. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Thanks very much, and see you in the next one.